I didn't plan on staying with my aunt this summer. The original idea was to crash at my friend Jake's place, help him with his moving business, and save enough for a crappy apartment closer to campus. But things changed. Before we dive deeper into this twisted story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from and enjoy. My dad and I had a fight. One of those arguments that doesn't feel like a fight until you realize you're not going back. And just like that, I was driving down 2 hours of highway with a duffel bag in the trunk and a half-hearted excuse in my throat. My aunt's name is Sarah. She's not really my aunt, just my mom's best friend from high school who stayed close even after my mom passed. Growing up, she was always just there. Holidays, birthdays, every big and small moment. She had a way of making everything feel calm. No drama, no lectures, just steady warmth. When I pulled into her driveway, she stepped out in cut-off denim shorts and an old college t-shirt, holding a garden hose like she'd been waiting. "Didn't think you'd actually come," she said, half smiling as she squinted into the sun. "I didn't think I would either." She tilted her head. "You okay?" I shrugged. "Not really." "Good," she said, tossing the hose aside. "That makes two of us." We didn't talk much that night. She made dinner, grilled vegetables, some kind of lemon chicken, and opened a bottle of white wine she said she'd been saving for a good reason. I wasn't sure I qualified, but she poured 2 glasses anyway and toasted to surviving things we didn't see coming. Her house was smaller than I remembered, cozier. The guest room still had the same green walls and the same bookshelf with all the old National Geographics from before I was born. The window overlooked the backyard, where wind chimes caught the breeze and cicadas hummed in a kind of endless pulse. I couldn't sleep. Maybe it was the unfamiliar bed. Maybe it was the silence. Or maybe it was the way her voice had sounded when she asked if I was okay. She hadn't pushed, hadn't tried to fix me, just saw me. It was past midnight when I gave up. I slipped on a shirt and padded down the hallway barefoot, moving by the dim light from the kitchen. I expected the house to be asleep, still, empty. But she was there. She sat at the table, one leg tucked under her, a mug of tea in her hands. Her hair was tied up messily, a few loose strands falling near her jaw. She wore a light robe, gray cotton, the belt knotted loosely at her waist, and glasses she didn't need unless she was reading. On the table beside her was an old paperback book, Dust Hunter, by someone I'd never heard of. She looked up as I entered, and her expression softened like she'd already guessed what I was about to say. "Can't sleep?" she asked quietly. I shook my head. "Not even close." She nodded once, like she understood more than I'd said. Then she reached out toward the empty chair beside her and said with a voice that somehow made the air shift, "Then come here." I froze just for a second. Something about the way she said it, gentle, casual, but weighted, made me hesitate. Not out of discomfort, but awareness. Her tone wasn't commanding. It was inviting, safe. I walked over and sat beside her, not too close, not far. She passed me a second mug, still warm, and I noticed the way her fingers brushed mine as she handed it off. She didn't pull away quickly. Tea was chamomile, soft and faintly sweet. We didn't say much. The hum of the refrigerator and the creak of the old house filled the space between us. She looked ahead, not at me, and I stole a glance, just long enough to notice how the light from the stove clock cast a glow on her cheekbone. Just long enough to remember how she'd always seemed older when I was a kid, and how now I wasn't quite a kid anymore. "I used to stay up like this," she said eventually, fingers tracing the cover of the Dust Hunter book. "After your mom died. Couldn't sleep without something warm to hold, something to read that took me somewhere else." I swallowed. I didn't know that. She looked at me now, really looked. "There's a lot we don't talk about." Her eyes didn't flinch. Neither did mine. Then she smiled faintly and broke the gaze. "But you don't have to talk. Just sit. That's enough." So I did. I sat there with her until the mug was empty and the night felt softer. I didn't look at the clock. I didn't check my phone. I just let the quiet hold me. Eventually, she stood and said she was heading to bed. Her robe shifted as she moved, and I caught the scent of lavender and mint as she passed me. Familiar, gentle, dangerous somehow. "Try again," she said, nodding toward the hallway. "Sleep might find you this time." I nodded but didn't move for a long time after she left. When I did go back to bed, I lay awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, her words echoing in my head. Then come here. They weren't just about the chair. I wasn't sure what they were about, but I knew I'd never hear them the same way again. The next morning felt too bright. The sunlight pushed through the blinds like it had something to prove, and the air smelled faintly of toast and clean laundry. I stayed in bed longer than usual, eyes half open, mind still looping through the night before. When I finally came out, she was folding laundry on the couch, barefoot, wearing a faded blue t-shirt and soft gray shorts. Her hair was pinned up, but a few pieces had already come loose and framed her face like something out of a movie. The Dust Hunter book sat on the coffee table, a bookmark halfway through. She didn't look up right away. "There's coffee," she said, not turning around. "Made it how you like it." I paused in the doorway for a second too long before heading to the kitchen. The mug was already out. My name was on the side in fading marker from when I was a kid. I ran my thumb across the handle before filling it, letting the scent of dark roast and cinnamon settle into me. When I came back into the living room, she looked up and smiled, just a small, quick thing, and went back to folding a towel. I sat on the edge of the armchair across from her and sipped quietly. We didn't say much that morning. The TV played some muted daytime show neither of us was watching. It was the kind of silence I used to find awkward when I was younger, but now it felt thick, alive. "What's the book about?" I asked, nodding toward Dust Hunter. She glanced at it. "Desert stories. People looking for things they've lost." She folded another shirt. "It's about the spaces between what we want and what we find." "Any good?" "Some stories stay with you longer than others." Later, we went grocery shopping together. She gave me the list, let me push the cart. It was all so normal, but I couldn't stop noticing the small things. The way she brushed her hair off her neck while deciding between brands of pasta. The way she rested her hand on my forearm when she leaned over to grab something from a shelf. That night, I showered and tried to sleep earlier than usual, but my body had other plans. Again, I found myself wide awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet. The wind rattled the trees outside. A soft creak moved through the hallway, pipes maybe, or something else. I got up, but this time I didn't go to the kitchen. I wandered down the hall, passing the framed photos of old holidays and vacations. One was of me and her from Thanksgiving maybe 8 years ago. I was still in braces. I stood outside her door just for a moment. The light under it was still on. I didn't knock. I backed away, quiet, slow, and returned to my room. But I didn't sleep. The next morning, she didn't mention anything. She handed me a plate of eggs and toast, asked me to change the light bulb in the hallway. She moved easily around the kitchen, but her eyes flicked to me more often than usual. We spent the afternoon organizing boxes in the garage. It was hot, dusty, but she put on a playlist and opened all the doors to let in the breeze. At some point, she climbed the stepladder to reach a shelf and asked me to steady her. My hands gripped the ladder, but my eyes couldn't help but follow the curve of her leg, the way her shirt lifted slightly when she reached. She asked for the bin marked Autumn, and I passed it up. Our fingers touched again, longer this time. She looked down at me. I looked up. Neither of us spoke. The air was thick with dust and something else. Later, back in the house, she brought me a glass of lemonade while I sat on the porch steps. She sat beside me, close enough that our knees almost touched. We watched the light fade behind the trees in silence. "You ever think about how quiet some places can be?" she asked. I nodded. "It's louder than it looks." She turned to me then, her eyes steady. "Exactly." I didn't know what she meant, but I felt it. After dinner, she said she was tired and headed upstairs early. I stayed on the couch a while, pretending to scroll through my phone, but I wasn't reading. I was listening, every step, every creak, every breath the house made. Eventually, I stood and turned off the lights. The hallway felt longer than usual. When I passed her room, I paused again. And just as I stepped past the door, I heard it soft and clear, "Still can't sleep." I froze, turned. She stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the warm lamp behind her. She wore a long sweater, no robe this time, no makeup, just her. The Dust Hunter book was in her hand. I opened my mouth, closed it, then nodded. She smiled gently. Didn't think so. I didn't answer her right away. Couldn't. There was something in the way she looked at me, calm, unshaken, but with a stillness that didn't feel neutral. She wasn't just checking if I was okay. She was waiting. "Come in," she said softly, stepping aside. I hesitated, then crossed the threshold. Her room hadn't changed since I was a kid. Same bookshelf in the corner. Same glass dish full of earrings. Same vanilla and mint smell in the air. But everything looked different now. Smaller, warmer, quieter. She sat on the edge of the bed and patted the spot next to her. "You don't have to talk," she said. "Just sit." So I did. The bed dipped slightly under my weight. Our shoulders weren't touching, but they could have been. I heard her breathe, slow and steady. I mirrored it without realizing. "You know," she said, not looking at me, "I used to think silence meant nothing was wrong." She smiled faintly. "Now I think it's where most of the important stuff lives." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. We sat like that for a long time. The fan above clicked softly. The shadows shifted on the walls. I glanced at her out of the corner of my eye, her hair slightly damp at the ends, her bare legs crossed, her hands resting loosely in her lap, still holding that book. She noticed. She always noticed. "You look tired," she said. "I am, but not sleepy." I looked down at my hands. "I don't think I've really slept since I got here." She turned her head toward me. "Why not?" I didn't answer right away, then quietly, "Too much in my head." "About your dad?" I shook my head. "About everything." She nodded slowly, her gaze steady. "Want to tell me some of it?" I took a breath. "I keep thinking about being back here. How different it feels." She watched me. "Different how?" "I don't know. Like time's moving slower, or like I'm noticing things I didn't before." She didn't look away. "What kinds of things?" I hesitated. I said. The word hung between us, soft but heavy. She blinked slowly. "Me?" I nodded. "I don't know when it started. I just keep replaying the way you said it that night in the kitchen." Her voice was almost a whisper. "Then come here." I nodded again. Silence. "I meant it," she said. I looked at her. "I know." We were still sitting apart, still not touching, but everything between us was charged now, thick and unspoken. "I think about it too," she said. "The silence, the timing, the way you've been looking at me lately." I didn't mean to. She held up her hand gently. "You don't have to apologize." I swallowed. "This isn't something we planned," she said. "But it's not something we imagined either." My chest tightened. "What do we do with it?" She looked down at her hands, then back up at me. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether you're still standing at the door or already inside." She was quiet again, then softer. "If you stay here, lock the door." My breath caught. She didn't move. Didn't lean in. Didn't touch me. She just waited, the Dust Hunter book still in her lap like a talisman. I stood slowly, walked to the door, closed it, turned the lock. The soft click felt louder than thunder. When I turned around, she was watching me, still seated, still steady, but her fingers gripped the edge of the comforter just a little tighter. The book had been set aside. I walked back and sat beside her again, closer this time. Our knees touched. Neither of us moved. Neither of us needed to. "You don't have to be careful," she said. "But I want to be," I said. "Because this matters." She let out a long breath, not tired, relieved. Then finally she reached for my hand. Her fingers slid into mine slowly, deliberately. No rush, no need, just warmth. "I didn't know what this was," she said. "But now I think I do." I looked down at our hands. "So do I." The fan kept clicking. The room stayed still. And everything we hadn't said now lived in the space between our fingers, like characters in that desert book, finally finding what they'd been searching for in the dust.